Hi, guys, and welcome to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja based photographer Tavishima Ayede. The question for today: is there any room for luck in driving up sales? Now, for those of you who've been listening from the beginning, you're going to be surprised because this is not one of those questions for where I have a yes and no answer. The answer today is a resounding yes, because no matter what you do, the outcomes are not assured. Let me repeat it. No matter how smooth you are, no matter how well thought out your sales process is, no matter how well the planets align in your favor, the outcomes aren't always assured. It's not a given that when you're speaking to a bride or a groom or the parents of the bride and the groom, that everything is going to fall into place and things will click. That's because there are too many intervening circumstances. You can do everything the best you can in your own situation, and the bride and groom can also do everything the best that they can, but then some things happen. In the more recent climes that we're living in, of course, we have COVID. That's one of the many intervening circumstances that can happen. And let's say COVID leads to, what's that word? Basically, people just feeling lackadaisical, and anyway, that's how you lose track of the whole process. But in my own experience, that's if we remove things like COVID from the situation. There's some typical things that happen. Now, these are examples that have happened to me in the past when I've been on point. I follow through with my sales process, but at the end of the day, some circumstances intervened, and there were some hiccups that there was no way I could reasonably foresee, and sometimes that the couple could foresee. For instance, I've had a couple break up just about a month before the wedding and before I collected my deposit. Now, my video guy had already collected his deposit, and for us, the policy that we have on refunds basically is we'll pretty much try and take the deposit towards another date or another engagement. But given these circumstances, we figured it would be best to just let the bride have her money back. So no photography deposit collected. We refunded the video deposit, and all was cool. And we're all friends till now, but there isn't another groom in sight. So that's one example of how your sales process is airtight. It's locked up real nice. But then circumstances intervene. All of a sudden, the groom says, I've spoken to my sisters, my mom, my uncle, my auntie, and even though we have printed the invitations and booked the wedding hall and flights have been arranged and hotels have been booked and everything, I'm not getting married anymore. Now, another circumstance where something happened that stalled the process, there was a death in the family. The bride and the groom, everything seemed to be going okay, and I think the groom's mom died and they weren't going to go. They wanted to take some time out so that the family could mourn, and for some reason things just went into that weird zone, and it's now been, I think, 6 years, and the couple isn't married. I don't think they're together. This was before I had a thorough sales process anyway, so I know I still have them in my social media and I see them every once in a while, but it's kind of awkward, and so I don't ask, hey, what happened? So that's one example where you do the best that you can do, but something stalls the process. And another one that has happened to me, well, this one has happened twice, is you set up everything nicely, all seems to be going well, you guys seem to be vibing, and then someone offers the couple a gift. And I understand these situations perfectly well. In fact, the last bride that this happened to me with, we seemed to be really cool, and they were getting ready to pay the deposit, and she was just upfront like, hey, Uncle so-and-so says he's going to give us a gift of a wedding photographer, and quite frankly, this is going to save us 400k. We love your work, but we really could use that 400k savings right now. And that's how I lost track of that. So anyway, these are just some examples of how we can see that there's luck. There's an element of luck that is involved in the process, because no matter what you do, the outcome isn't assured, because COVID can happen, death can happen, breakups can happen, someone can offer the couple a gift, And I'm sure that if this were a group forum and I was able to interview a couple of you wedding planners, makeup artists, or whatever it is that you're involved in, you would also have similar stories and different instances where something just intervened and it pretty much just put a fly in the ointment. So, the only thing that we're in charge of is the process. And because of that, I think we should focus on the process and not get emotionally tied to the outcomes. Some people really take it hard when these things happen. So COVID happens, people get angry. Or the couple breaks up and you say, oh, why me? That was such a sweet deal. Or there's death in the family and you're like, drats, that would have been a good, that would have been a nice one for, the coffers. But basically, don't sweat it. Don't get emotionally tied to outcomes, because the only thing that you're in control of is the process. So whatever process it is that you have, just keep on with the process. If the outcome is good, yay. If the outcome is bad, see what you can learn from it and tweak, just in case there was something that you did or failed to do in your process that made it fall apart. And if there was something that you did wrong on your own part after reflection, then you can take that on board, and in the future, hopefully it makes the odds line up in your favor. Now, sometimes things go the other way. Sometimes we don't have a process at all, or we don't have a well thought out process, and things do seem to pull through. Now, this is an example that happened to me quite recently. 4 years ago, back when I had a poorly thought out process, it wasn't really a process. I just answered the phone pretty much, and I think I would freestyle from there. I didn't have a CRM or a follow-up process. CRM is, I think that's customer relationship management. That's either a software or a philosophy that guides you through how you interact with the clients right from the beginning all through your relationship, and it also does encompass things like follow-up. So for those of you who haven't given any conscious thought to that, that's CRM, customer relationship management. It's something that you should pay attention to, and if you do try to take this philosophy of personal sales seriously, it's one of the ideas that you're going to be exposed to. How do you manage client relationships? So back then, I didn't have a CRM, I didn't have a follow-up process. It was for the person who called was the sister-in-law. She called on behalf of a sister-in-law, and it was going to be her sister-in-law's baby baptism. Like I said, I was winging it. I freestyled. It was a failed bid. I didn't have any follow-up process in place. But back then, and I confess, still till now, I have this weird way of storing people's names so I don't forget the circumstances of how we met. And it's something that my father-in-law does as well. My wife found it real funny one day when she was with her father's phone and someone called, and the name was, I think it was Sonny, DPO, Body the Hot. For those of my listeners who are not Nigerian, the American listeners and the UK listeners, Sunny is an abbreviation for Sunday, I believe, and then DPO I think is it's a title. That's like District Police something. Can't remember what it is. And then the colloquial Body the Hot. That's what you would say when someone is prone to irrational bouts of anger. Let me just put it that way. So the name flashed up, and well, obviously my father-in-law knew who it was exactly. So my wife found it hilarious, but my father-in-law just knew that, okay, is this dude who's a police officer, who's a DPO, and he's prone to irrational bouts of anger. And it just clicked. They had a wonderful conversation, and that was that. And after that, we had that interesting conversation about how my father-in-law and I have similar ways of storing names, because I do that sort of thing. So I could store the bride's name as, let's say, Angela Okonji-Iweala, brides and babies 2020 March. Okay, so in that case, her name, that first part would be her name. The second part would be, okay, the part where I wrote, where I would write brides and babies March 2020. That would be the wedding exhibition at which I met the bride. But basically, I have this weird chain kind of names so that once it flashes, I know who it is that is calling. So this lady calls, I have a look at the long name, and it just clicks like, oh, I know who she is. So I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, long time, how have you been? How's baby? So and so. And she was surprised that I remembered, and we had a good conversation from there. Of course, I didn't tell her that I have this weird way of storing names. I guess one of the reasons why that way of storing names back then was especially important because I didn't have a CRM, a customer relationship management process or philosophy. So I needed a quick way to be able to know who was calling, where did we meet, and things like that. So I received this surprise call in 2020 because she was now turning 30 years old. This was, even though last time we spoke was 4 years ago, remember that. And well, anyway, it clicked, and I did cover her birthday about a week ago. Now, this is an example where you have a wedding vendor who has no process or who has a flawed sales process, but somehow it still leads to business in the end. So it underscores what it is that I've already said earlier in this recording, that the only thing that we're in charge of is the process. So focus on the process and don't get emotionally tied to outcomes. If you have a good sales process, good on you. Keep up on it and see the best way that you can improve it and refine it over time. If you have a semi-thought out sales process, then well, still follow your process, still see how you can refine it and get better, keep learning, keep improving. But the bottom line is there are too many intervening circumstances, and so there's no way that the outcomes are guaranteed. So we have to be process driven, and let's not get emotionally tied to outcomes. So thank you very much, guys, for listening. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. As usual, questions, comments, queries, hit me up on email, ayede.taver@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter as AYEDETAVER. There's no underscore there. So thank you very much, guys, for listening. I'll hit you guys up on the next episode.